Chapter 3. Distillation. Usually few woke up after being shot in the head, even fewer unharmed, of the few who did, and not merely imagined they were shot at, though missed. None. But Kleio was unhurt, while the vanishingly brief sensation of a bullet penetrating her forehead remained highly present. As if from a nightmare, drenched in sweat and breathing heavily, she awoke in a bed. Her confusion increased immeasurably. She knew neither where she was, nor how in the world she got here. It hardly looked like a hospital room. It lacked the equipment that would be expected at the bedside of someone who had survived an assassination attempt. Rather, the surroundings corresponded exactly to the pictures on the website according to whose criteria Kleio had booked her accommodation via Airbnb. A generous bed with blue covers in a bright room, much too lovingly furnished for a hospital and expansive in proportions. Pictures hung patterned on the walls. Furniture of the most beautiful woodwork gave it its cozy ambience. In fact, the idyll was so complete that Kleio must have been one of the first guests who woke up so disturbed from their slumber. Guaranteed for the first time from the slumber of death. Beyond any doubt, it could be asserted that it was by no means a hospital, but impossibly how Kleio should have woken up in one at all after an execution. Actually, she was never allowed to wake up again. She felt her forehead, the place where definitely a hole should have been, but the spot was pristine, overall in a contradictorily flawless state. Kleio straightened up, immediately spied her luggage next to the kitchen table, which only increased her confusion. She couldn't remember when or how she put her things there, let alone she entered the apartment. Or when she last felt the need for her next action. She turned on the small television on the dresser in front of her and zapped through all the channels, struggling through a seemingly endless series of banalities. Searching for news of the bizarre bank robbery, only the usual afternoon program was on, determined by reality TV, commercials and poorly staged talk shows. The only insight was that it was probably the stupidest way to waste time. Only now she remembered to ask the oracle of the internet. Briefly, she got the impression that her brain suffered a severe trauma because it took so long for her to think about it. Only the oracle also knew nothing about a robbery in Berlin. The most terrible things seemed to happen everywhere, except in Berlin. Not a single thing worth mentioning.
Did I dream it all?
She asked herself. It must have been the most real dream of her life that happened seamlessly after her arrival and the chance meeting with Leon. She lacked any memory of how she arrived at the B&B, which again pointed to the reality of the incident. No matter how surreal the events at the bank might now seem, she had almost certainly been shot. Any other explanation seemed impossible to her. except for medical causes, with every reason for concern. What if she was suffering from a brain tumor? Some malignant condition? The thought of it drove her insane. She reached for her purse and searched the wallet for clues. She found no cash, so she could assume she didn't even go to a bank.
My browser history.
She remembered, and checked to see if she had even looked for a bank, but found nothing to indicate that she had. Kleio packed her bag and left the room. She ran down a flight of stairs that she could remember just as little, and first had to look for the reception desk. There she finally met a woman who was completely unknown to her. The woman, on the other hand, seemed to recognize her instantly.
So, are you happy with the room? Did we sleep well?
She asked, affably.
Everything okay?
Kleio had to give a disturbed impression.
To be honest, I'm a little groggy. When did I arrive?
The woman looked perturbed. Slight concern mingled in her gaze.
About 3 hours ago. You said you were tired from the trip? That you looked too deep into the glass yesterday and wanted to lie down for a bit?
Out of a lack of understanding, she emphasized it at the end like a question.
Don't you feel better?
If Kleio gave her an explanation now, she would surely think she was having a stroke. Who said that wasn't the case? It sounded far more likely than that she caught a bullet in the forehead, like some virus.
Yes.
She lied.
Now, I remember.
Which was not at all true. She didn't want to worry the woman with fantasies. They were bothering her enough.
The room is excellent, by the way. Unfortunately, I forgot to get money. I still want to go to town anyway. Then I can right away.
There's no hurry.
The woman replied nicely.
You'll be with us for a few days after all.
Kleio put on a smile that made her feel fake, and took her leave for her room. What a stubborn construct the human mind was, capable of persuading oneself of the most unbelievable things, and finding explanations where there were none. Kleio calmed down after her sense of reality returned. She talked herself into the explanation, repeating it often enough in her mind, until she began to believe it herself. She must have simply dreamt the incident at the bank. Similarly sounded the interpretation of her mind. How she could forget the check-in again worried her. A slight intoxication and lack of sleep had led to hallucinations and loss of reality in some. To the degree that the borders between dream and reality blurred, she swept her doubts under the rug of her consciousness, attributed it entirely to the circumstances.
Was the meeting with Leon then also just a dream?
She asked herself. The pleasant beginning of what turned into a nightmare? Kleio picked up her cell phone and checked the call log. 3 missed calls from her mother were the first to catch her eye. She overlooked those on purpose. The unknown number sandwiched between them jumped out at her next. She had forgotten to save Leon's contact. 2 messages were also sent to her from this number. She opened them with the premonition that it was Leon, was immediately confirmed. In the first one, he inquired whether their date was set, with a clearly ambiguous choice of words. In the second message, he added that his friends, and one female friend, had already agreed. It weakened the sense that he seemed quite sure of how this night would turn out. Kleio wondered whether, with amnesia and real hallucinations, it was advisable to go to another party today, or whether she should see a doctor as soon as possible. But except for the part of today she couldn't remember, and the part that couldn't possibly have happened, she felt downright fantastic, not at all like someone who took a bullet. Her hangover from this morning she got rid of during her nap. Only her stomach growled indignantly, and she remembered that she hadn't eaten anything yet. The admonition came with the feeling of hunger, as if the bullet hole had secretly migrated from her head to her stomach. She repressed the memory that wasn't one, the memory of a dream. At most, she was eager to embark on the adventure, but a true one. Why should she bother with any fantasies when real life was calling her? That's pretty much how her mind laid it out. An extensive shower was on the agenda. For this purpose, she chose the background music, installed the speakers she had with her on the white floor of her bathroom. She tuned in her playlist, a compilation of indie rock, prog, alternative, avant-garde, and electropop, dominated by 70s and 80s, right on the money, with the nostalgia of a time she never experienced. And without her consciously noticing the irony, the muffled bass sounded from the intro of Talking Heads, Psycho Killer. Dancing, she stripped off her clothes, made a show in front of the mirror, the kind of one usually did only when one felt unobserved, and swung under the spray of the shower head. She continued to move to the rhythm, never missing a beat or her vocal cue, her soft voice in direct contrast to the original. Only in the chorus her voice smudged, and she cleared her throat before finding her way back into the song, washing herself in the meantime. She still failed to recognize the irony from the lyrics, or didn't want to. Her worries dissolved under the stream of water, washed away from her by the feeling of familiarity the song gave her. It didn't bother her a bit when it started again, even if she couldn't remember when she had set the automatic repetition. It just became the soundtrack of her personal hygiene. Towards the end of the second or third run, she got out of the shower, sang persistently. In her exuberance, she failed to notice how slippery the floor was becoming from her capers. Splashes of water formed the film on which the calamity was captured. They smeared a surface that in any case had little traction. Immediately, the soles of her feet lost their grip, and she fell. A fall that would have broken the neck of a senior citizen's femur. But except for the pain and a scrape on her left hand, a bruise she would carry away on her leg, she remained unharmed. Suddenly, she realized that there was damage to the tiles of the shower.
Is this from me?
She asked herself, dumbfounded. It seemed unthinkable. Over 2 tiles where she had caught herself, it almost seemed as if part of her handprint had been imprinted, in a bulge that was accurately the size of the heel of her hand. She checked it against the corresponding counterpart. Her hand nestled perfectly against it. No crack was visible. Nothing was crumbled or broken. It was more as if the tiles had momentarily lost their firmness and could be deformed like plasticine.
It's definitely not from me.
She was convinced, unless she had recently developed superpowers.
It must have been there already.
She decided. It just so happened that her hand fit perfectly into it. And it just so happened that when she fell, it landed precisely there. Life was a chain of such accidents. This time, she accidentally met chance. The pain and shock soon subsided, and she put on her nicest underwear. She hardly intended that anyone should see it tonight but herself. She felt comfortable in it, and it fit like wax.
Très élégant.
As she always thought and knew, and at the same time unexpectedly comfy. In the selection of the rest of her wardrobe, external factors played a role. She didn't want to show up too sexy, so that Leon would not get the wrong ideas, just as little as a grey mouse. Her choice therefore fell on a blue and sleeveless cashmere dress. Over it, she put a leather belt with a golden buckle, which emphasized her waist. The whole thing she combined with black leggings, long velvet gloves, which reached her upper arms. After that, it was on to the mask, of which she rarely put much. In this respect, she remained true to herself. She quickly applied a foundation and a little blush, touched up her eyelashes with a little mascara, ran a dark red lipstick over her pout and was content with that.
Cela suffit.
She added the final accent with a pair of earrings she once got from her father. Small pins of curved gold and silver, and studded with a pearl each. Completing the outfit was her dark Chanel coat, which her mother gave her for her last birthday, with large buttons. Finally, her slender feet wrapped in the same pair of beige suede boots in which she had probably arrived. So exactly she could not say, after all. Yet, she had only 3 pairs with her, so the selection in this respect was meager. They were sufficiently chic, featured small heels, which she liked, without sacrificing all functionality. The pair of cute shoes on the way to the bank came to her mind, before she remembered that they didn't exist any more than the bank robber from her nightmare. And she looked again at her actual outfit. After a glance in the mirror, She liked herself sufficiently, was dressed for any change of weather, any scene bar en vogue. With 3 spritzes of her most lovely perfume, she doused the conclusion and felt armed.